Hey there, I'm Steve, and welcome to Jamsin Entertainment. And welcome to the conversation. Just before we get started, there are many ways you can help. You can like and subscribe so you never miss a conversation. But most importantly, please share this video. Get the word out there's a community we can talk about all things that we love. Today on Throwback Thursday, we're looking at Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. If you're familiar with the podcast, and I'll link the first episode below, I got introduced to Star Wars through the re-release, which is the special edition. The first wave of them anyway. That's what I watched for the longest time. And then Lucas decided to change too much, in my opinion. It's in the next movie. He switches out the voice actor for Boba Fett, and, well, I'll link the episode below so you know what I'm talking about. I have the original version on VHS. I haven't watched it, mostly because I want to preserve it, but I do have it on DVD as well. I've never bought the Blu-ray or the 4K version of the original trilogy because, I don't know about now, but I think it's only the special edition available. And Lucas has changed things from what I hear since it came out in VHS. Like, the DVD collection I have says the original theatrical version. It's probably true except for one aspect. Famously, when they're on the Tantive 4, the ship that gets boarded by the Imperials, there's this blue filter on the screen. And when they were advertising the special edition, they put them side by side. They demonstrated the differences between them. And the blue filter is not in this theatrical release. It's probably on the VHS that I have. But I heard that Lucas changed things even from the theatrical to the VHS. What those are, I probably never know unless I sit down with someone who watched it in theaters when it came out and they have such a good memory that they know the tiny differences they made. I will say that some of the upgrades in the special editions are good. For instance, one of the big things that Lucas did first was make Tatooine more lively. The creatures in the background move around more. There's more activity on the streets. It brings more weight to the world. The story in this one picks up right after Rogue One. The Rebels are fleeing the Empire with the Death Star plans. If you're not familiar, the Death Star is an enormous space station that has the capacity to destroy an entire planet with one shot. It's the Emperor's new way to control the galaxy instead of having the regional governors take care of things, because they can be corrupted, they can be overthrown, and if you have a world-killing machine out there, the idea is it will quell the rebellion. Before I get further into the plot, this movie has a huge cast. It wasn't seen as a huge cast back then, but now they're all A-list. Mark Hamill, Harrison Ford, Carrie Fisher, David Prowse as the person in the Darth Vader suit, James Earl Jones as the voice of Darth Vader, Peter Cushing, Sir Alec Guinness, Peter Mayhew, Kenny Baker, Anthony Daniels, Phil Brown, Stella Fraser, and Dennis Lawson, who is the uncle of Ewan McGregor. The Rebel ship gets boarded by the Imperials, and it has one of the greatest entrances of a villain in cinema history, Darth Vader. Also on this ship is Princess Leia, who puts the disc holding the technical readouts of the Death Star into R2-D2 and requests help from Obi-Wan Kenobi. She gets captured and the droids jettison themselves in an escape pod onto the planet Tatooine. From there, they wander around until they get picked up by Jawas. Jawas are scrap scavengers and thieves that sell their bounties to the locals of Tatooine. There, 3PO and R2-D2 meet Uncle Owen, Luke, and Aunt Beru. And R2-D2 can't shut up about this mission, and 3PO's like, what are you talking about? They eventually run into Ben Kenobi, who actually is Obi-Wan Kenobi. They're looking to get off Tatooine to help the princess and to fight the Empire. And they hire Han Solo, who was recommended to them by his co-pilot, Chewie. Now, Han Solo here, if you watch the movies chronologically, he's a bit more rough around the edges than he is in Solo. It's another reason why I would like to see a second movie. So in Solo, what I meant by that he's basically Han Solo that we know in this movie is that he's a good guy that is an outlaw. You don't really get that sense in A New Hope. You get the sense that he's an outlaw that will do anything for himself and for his co-pilot, Chewie. That's something we really missed in the Solo movie, because Han is ruthless, demonstrated by the scene with Greedo, and Han always shot first. That's a huge controversy that came up when Lucas was fiddling with the movies. Only to later find out that when he was filming the prequel trilogy, he wore a shirt that said Han shot first. It's a weird world we live in. I don't want to go too much into the whole Han talk. That can be an entire video on its own. On their trip to Alderaan, Obi-Wan teaches Luke about the Force, how it's an energy source surrounding all living things, and how it works through us and with us. Han brushes it off, famously saying, "I've flown from one end of this galaxy to the other. I've seen a lot of strange stuff, but I don't believe there's any one all-powerful force controlling everything." And given that the Jedi have been non-existent, at least to the mass public, for 18 years, I can see where he would think that. I don't want to go into more detail. The movie's too exciting and gripping. I've seen this movie countless times. I don't know, maybe because I'm consciously watching this, I'm going to make a video about it. The memories of me watching the special edition are flooding back, and I feel like a 12-year-old again, and it's just an amazing feeling. I know this is a theatrical release, supposedly, but I got the feeling of awe and wonder all over again. The tension in this movie is still there. Even though I know how it's going to play out, I still on the edge of my seat watching every moment of this movie. Again, linked below in the podcast, I was not a Star Trek fan, and Star Wars became my Star Trek. This was the coolest thing I ever saw next to Batman. I immediately started learning all the lines, every movement. I got a lightsaber. I was playing Star Wars all day, all night. I had just absolutely loved this movie. Also linked below will be my thoughts on possible Star Wars chit-chat back in the day, like when the movie came out and what people may have talked about then. I won't mention them here because this is spoiler-free, but it is interesting if these topics were brought up in the late 70s and early 80s. Because it just makes sense to me that Lucas was dropping these bits of information for you. Now, Lucas never expected Star Wars to become what it is. He wasn't entirely sure if there were going to be sequels. But still, the storytelling breadcrumbs he leaves in here, it just makes me question if, despite not knowing if he was going to make a sequel or not, if he put him in there anyway, just in hopes that he could. Makes sense to me. Find out what I'm talking about in the description below with the podcast talking about my feelings on the special edition and just theories about Star Wars. It's also absolutely fascinating how Lucas came to write Star Wars. There's actually a comic book series. I'm not going to say it's based off the first concept of Star Wars because Darth Vader is supposed to be a green alien, and in this comic series he's not. The comic book series is probably what he almost shot. Like, all three movies are supposed to be somehow told in one. Fox, at the time when they owned Star Wars, was like, no, you have to cut it down, and so he rewrote it to be what it is now. But research how he came up with Star Wars. It's fascinating. He wanted to create a modern myth, and he definitely went out and did that. You can definitely see what inspired him on the screen. I haven't seen it. I have heard that there's a World War II movie that has plane fights in there and that he recreates some of the shots for A New Hope. He's also a huge fan of Akira Kurosawa, and it's probably where he got the idea for the Jedi because they're basically samurai. I mean, look at Vader. He's basically wearing samurai armor. I could just go on and on about how much I love this movie. I can't highly recommend it enough. If you can find the DVDs of the theatrical release, it was a limited edition release. It comes with whatever the latest special edition was and the theatrical. If not, I recommend you get a VHS player and watch the VHS, but be careful so you don't destroy it. Maybe one of these days I'll watch the VHS for nostalgia reasons and see what differences there are between my theatrical release version and the VHS version. That would be pretty interesting. But this is a must-see movie. It's among the classics. It's definitely among my favorite movies. Those are my thoughts on Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and live your imagination.